Welcome to Tabletop Gaming with Juice. I am Juice, and this is another chapter review of the Dungeons & Dragon Dungeon Master's Guide. This will be Chapter 3, Creating Adventures. And let me just start off by saying, much like the first chapter, I think this is a great chapter for brand new Dungeon Masters to read. There's not really a whole lot of new things in here for anyone who's run a lot of games before. It starts off going into the elements of a great adventure, and it talks about it from the sense of these are the things that tend to make up a great adventure, and it's pretty general, pretty broad in my opinion. They talk about you want a credible threat, familiar tropes with clever twists, a clear focus on the present, heroes who matter, which I couldn't agree with that more. Putting the emphasis on your heroes in your campaigns is the number one thing you should always do as a dungeon master. It also talks about something for all player types. What it is talking about is, you can find a nice balance among your players and try to give everybody a little bit of what they would like. It talks about surprises. And then it mentions useful maps. Now, the useful maps thing made me think. I've played in some games online through the Tabletop RPG One-Shot group, which you can find on Facebook. But I've played in some games online, and I've found that while almost all of them are extremely fun, the people who tend to use maps and pictures by screen sharing on Google Plus Hangouts, I think do a better job grabbing your attention. For instance, all these games online have been theater of the mind. And so maybe at your table you play theater of the mind so you can understand that, or you've done it. But I've found that when the DM can give you a nice picture to display something quickly so that you can quickly relate where things are, I find that helps. And this kind of talks about that a little bit. So just wanted to put some emphasis on that. Because I think that's true. While they only have 2 paragraphs, I think useful maps can be very helpful. Or pictures of your villains or your monsters. I think that's helpful. And that's obviously if you don't use miniatures. I personally like miniatures on my home games. It talks about running published adventures a little bit, which, yeah, sure, if you don't have time to plan your own, but I think published adventures take just as much time as preparing your own adventure. Just my opinion. And I think that because you still have to familiarize yourself with what's in that and what happens later on. Because if you don't look at what happens later on, you might find yourself doing something and going, oh crap, I screwed up the, things from later on. So published adventures are fine. Don't get me wrong. I like published adventures. But it's saying here if you don't have the time to run an adventure or to prep an adventure, a published adventure is the way to go. And I don't agree with that. Be sure to leave your comments below if you do. But then it talks about adventure structure. Again, nothing new here. It talks about the beginning, middle, and ending. It talks about in the beginning you want a good hook. Not much really to say about that. Then it goes into the middle and it says, majority of your adventure unfolds here. And then the ending encompasses a huge climax. Plan this out ahead of time, but don't force your ending on the players. Let your players have control by their actions throughout the campaign of the ending. So maybe you have it planned out, but whatever the players do should affect the ending. I can agree with that. I've never actually ran a campaign to a conclusive ending. Just me. Maybe you guys have. Maybe you haven't. Again, leave your comments below about that. Then it goes into the 2 types of adventure. Location-based adventures and event-type adventures. Under location-based adventures, it comes up with identifying party goals. And so from that, it says dungeon goals and wilderness goals. And it's 2 tables. And there's some good stuff on there. A lot of it's, pretty common. For instance, dungeon goal, stop the dungeon's monstrous inhabitants from raiding the surface world. I mean, that's self-explanatory. Wilderness goals. Escort an NPC to a destination. Okay, that makes sense. So basically, you're in one place, you're taking this NPC to place B. That's it. That's the premise of that one. And then from there, you would go on with what actually happens in the adventure. And there's 20 for each. So, you can mix it up a little bit there. So then it goes into other goals. So what might be another goal? Defend a location from attackers. All right, so that could be one, or retrieve an object from a caravan. Again, self-explanatory stuff. It goes into identifying important NPCs. So it comes up with different tables. So adventure villains, adventure allies, adventure patrons. Then it says flesh out your location details, find the ideal introduction. And actually it has 12 different, so it has a table of 12 different introductions. So, I mean, that could be useful. And again, I think this stuff is mostly useful for brand new dungeon masters. This is, if you've been running games for years and you've got multiple dungeon master guides, I don't think that this will be as helpful for you as it would be for somebody who's brand new to running games. So it's good for inspiration. I don't think this book is necessary, but it is a great book for inspiration. So anyways, then it goes into find the ideal, or consider the ideal climax for your adventure. And it gives you, again, 12 things, a table of 12 for the adventure climax. It goes into planning encounters, which, then you plan out each encounter for that adventure. And then it goes into event-based encounter or adventures. So from there, it says start with a villain, determine the villain's actions, and it gives you a table of 6 for his actions, breaks down what they would be. Then it goes into determining the party's goals. Bring the villain to justice, protect or hide an NPC. So again, all these different, it's got 20 different things, 20 things that make sense for a event-based adventure. It goes into identifying important NPCs, anticipate the villain's reactions, detail key locations. Sorry, just a sec. This is driving me nuts. It was a little bit loose and kept moving on my head. But yeah, detail key locations, choose an introduction into climax, again, plan the encounters, and then it goes into the different types of adventures you would have. So mysteries, intrigue, and it breaks them down again. It has a table for framing events, which, it's got some good stuff on there. It's, and I want to say there's about 50 different ones, give or take a few. But for example, one of the events could be a new year, or a lunar eclipse, or a funeral, full moon, birth of a child. So a lot of different things. Complications, and it says under complications, sometimes an adventure isn't as straightforward as it might seem. Gives you moral quandaries on a table, twists, side quests. So those are good too. In fact, if you end a game mid-adventure, why not shake it up? Give them a side quest or a twist, something, throw a wrench in their plans. It's one of the best ways to really, draw your players in. So I like that. And so then they're focused on multiple things and, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened or whatever. So then it goes into creating encounters. And, without giving away a lot, it gives you different objective. Yeah, it even says sample objectives, different objectives. And, with, like I said, without giving a whole lot away, they're pretty good. It's more than just you go and fight something, kill something, and save the princess. There's a little bit more to it, and so that's kind of nice. Which any good DM's guide is going to have more than that. So, for example, you could be retrieving an object. stopping a ritual, make peace. Then it talks about creating combat encounters. And it does give you the XP calculations on how to do it. And that's about 1 full page. Actually, 2 full pages, because then it talks about party size and things like that. So, you know, Posey, you might hate that, but it's in here. And it seems like it might be pretty fair the way they do it. In the back of this book, it also has has monsters by not only their CR level, but location. So you can still make it make sense using the formulas in here. So then it talks about adventuring day and how much XP characters should get per day. Okay, I don't usually do stuff like that. I usually just run what I feel should happen. I don't pay a lot of attention to the CR stuff. I'll look at it and see if things are close, but only sometimes, because frankly, I've thrown big things at first level characters before. And I've thrown piddly things at high level characters. Talks about modifying encounter difficulty, short rests, fun combat encounters. Gives you some things to think about. Random encounters. Now, I personally roll up all my random encounters beforehand. I love using tables. And so when I'm prepping things, I roll for my treasure there, I'll roll for my random encounters, and I'll just write it down in case random encounter comes up. Then in game, I'll roll dice to see if a random encounter happens or not, sometimes. So that's how I handle it. But this talks about random encounters, talks about creating urgency and interest. Really good section, actually. And then triggers for your random encounters. It talks about random encounter tables and gives you some. So it gives you some forest encounters, things like that. So actually, it only gives you forest encounters. So anyways, you can always reskin this table, though, using the encounters in the back based on the area. So that, in a sense, is a little disappointing that it only gives you 1 random encounter table, and it's a forest. That's it. So, you know, again, this section is good for new dungeon masters. So I'm 3 chapters into this book. The next chapter will end up being creating non-player characters. And so far, of what I've read, I like the book. I'm glad I bought the book. It's very useful for 5th edition. If I knew somebody was planning on running a game, so far this might not be the book that I would recommend. If you're getting into running games, I'd probably, you know, steer you different directions first. If you're going to be running 5th edition, obviously I would say you should read this first, just because it relates to the game specifically, and it has some mechanic stuff that relates to 5th edition. But this is not the best Dungeon Master's manual I've ever read. Just my personal opinions. If you've got the 5th edition Dungeon Master Guide, I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with me. Love to hear your thoughts. If you're looking to buy it, you know, still hold out and wait until, you know, you see other reviews that are more in depth. I will go through every single chapter before it actually comes out on the 9th. So like I said, next chapter will be chapter 4. And I believe there are only 9 chapters anyway. So double check again for you. Yes, there are 9 chapters and then the appendixes. So I'll probably go through the appendix also on the same day as I do chapter 9. But again, it's not a bad book. Don't get me wrong. The magic items in here, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of things that are very useful. But so far, through the first 3 chapters, I would not recommend this book to a brand new DM unless they're only running 5th edition. So just my opinion. I would still recommend other books. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think. And share this with your friends. I'd appreciate it. Be sure to check out rpgjuice.com. I have my blog up there. We're going to have a podcast coming soon. Probably after this project, I will start focusing on the podcast. We got a shirt up there, all sorts of things. If you feel like supporting my channel, be sure to check out my Patreon account up there. Yeah, up there. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and obviously YouTube. So thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.